Adam Jahr, if I haven't met you yet. I am the founder of Vue Mastery, and we are a platform dedicated to educating developers in the Vue ecosystem. And if you're not familiar with our platform, we have a library of courses, approaching 60 courses in different learning paths, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or looking for more advanced deep dives. We have content upcoming with Evan Yu, where he explores the new Vapor mode. So it's a great one-stop shop to get started and dive deeper into the Vue ecosystem. Now, over the years, we started in 2017, myself and my co-founder, Greg Pollock, and we've really been able to experience the power of developer education. With our free and paid content, we've reached millions of developers around the world and been able to help accelerate the adoption of open source while also supporting the sustainability of the technology that we teach. We do a monthly give back to the Vue ecosystem, to the Vue framework, to different maintainers and contributors within the ecosystem, because we feel if we're going to make money teaching it, we should give back into the technology that allows us to do what we love, which is developer education. Now, usually at conferences like this, I will take one of our courses and present it live and essentially take what could be a complex and cloudy concept and distill it and condense it into a golden nugget of knowledge. And today, I'm actually going to take a step back and go a little meta and talk about what is actually my process and what is the kind of best practices around developer education. Because as we share knowledge, we can really shine a path which illuminates a direction. And where do all great paths go? Well, they ultimately lead to mastery. And I get that probably a lot of you are not directly involved with developer education, but I do want to remind you that there is power in quality education, and it can be really leveraged for various outcomes. So whether you have an open source project that you want to get more users to, you have a plugin that you want more people to try out, maybe you have a SaaS company that you want to bring more users into, you want to hit additional KPIs in DevRel, or you just want to be a content creator yourself. All of this requires understanding how to reach and teach developers, which is really the topic of today's talk. Because as I mentioned, knowledge, that leads to mastery, and this transforms users into advocates, which is going to help accelerate the adoption through expanding the community of people sharing the knowledge. So we're going to look at how to reach and teach developers. And by the way, there will be a quiz at the end if anyone wants to get a free sweatshirt specifically. So based on the content that I'm presenting today, I'll be asking a question at the end, and the lucky winner is going to get that sweatshirt. So as we know, developers like ourselves are constantly navigating a sea of new information. There's endlessly updating tools, some fun toys and potential treasures to pursue along the way. But of course, time is a finite resource, and work-life balance is vital, and we can only learn a few things at a time. So when you're targeting developers and wanting to bring them into whatever it is that you're doing and wanting to onboard them into, you really need to be mindful of their focus and limited time resources. A recent study actually uncovered something we probably intuitively already understand about the way that developers learn, and they go through a 4-step journey. It starts with exploration. This is when we search for resources and discover relevant documentation. Then we move into understanding, where we're starting to comprehend content and grasp the concepts. Then we move into practice, where we are applying that knowledge into hands-on scenarios. And finally, application, where we're integrating those learned skills into our real-world projects. Now, there's many moving parts when it comes to developer education and hitting all of these key moments along the journey, but I like to synthesize this into a mental model that I think is pretty repeatable, and that is to use the classic timeless structure of storytelling, the hero's journey. So whether you're watching Star Wars or The Lion King, all of these classic stories use this modality of taking someone along a journey of exploration towards mastery and transformation, and that is the mental model that I'm going to share with you to achieve effective developer education. So every developer or hero in the journey starts in their ordinary world. In the Lord of the Rings, this is Frodo in the Shire. He's living his ordinary life, unaware of what's possible outside the world until he receives a call to adventure. In Harry Potter, this is receiving the letter to go to Hogwarts, discovering a new world full of magic. For developers, this is them finding your product or your content and seeing a potential to gain new abilities or solve problems in novel ways. But ultimately, the hero hesitates, and there is the refusal of the path. In Star Wars, this is Luke Skywalker, where he hesitates to leave Tatooine. And for developers, this is moments of skepticism where they're not sure if spending the time to learn and adopt whatever you're offering is truly worth it. But along comes the mentor. This is the supportive guide who supplies the hero with wisdom, tools, and encouragement, just like Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings or Dumbledore in Harry Potter. It is a guide that allows you to essentially gain trust with your developers. In the context of developer education, it's that guiding content itself, equipping them with tutorials and documentation and the knowledge that give them the confidence to take that journey forward. So ultimately, all heroes have a choice to make. Do they stay in their ordinary world, or they take the red pill like Neo did in The Matrix and uncover a whole new world full of possibility and transformation? So when developers reach this step, that means they decide to fully engage, they move past their doubts and insecurity, and they decide to be investing their time adopting your technology. As developers approach their inmost cave of the hero's journey, this means they're tackling the more complex features of your product. They are learning to apply it for their use cases. This is Indiana Jones in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he's facing the greatest risks to reach the Ark. And when they fully realize their product's potential, they've reached a transformative breakthrough. So they're able to leverage their mastery to competently solve their major challenges. In Harry Potter, this is when he achieves the Philosopher's Stone, or it's Link pulling the Master Sword in Zelda. And then finally, the hero makes a return home with the elixir, and this is Bilbo Baggins returning to the Shire. Developers return to their communities, and they have newfound skills and insights to share with their community. And effectively, they're advocating on your behalf, creating that full circle. So let's uncover a little bit deeper how to guide this developer along that hero's journey. So a developer's ordinary world is going to be one filled with suboptimal workflows. There's going to be productivity gaps, struggles to find problems with maybe bugs they keep encountering, or workflows that just are a little more friction-filled than they would like, and they're unaware that a solution, your solution, is available to them to resolve these pain points. So your job is to empathize with the needs of your user, to get into their headspace so you understand what their ordinary world looks like and how you can add value and ease to their life. In this state of empathy, that's going to inform everything from the design and copy of your website, the content strategy you implement so that they can find you through avenues like SEO and learn from you very quickly, the community that you will build for them and their peers, and if necessary, the targeting you might use in paid ads to find or retarget them. So understanding the ordinary world of your ideal user, this enables you to meet them where they are and pull them from that into a better place. So the call to adventure, this is about providing developers with a compelling invitation to leave that ordinary world and to explore a better way forward. And this is only achievable first if you get their attention. So you want to be creating content that addresses your heroes' pain points. Essentially, you need to become the solution to their problem and the answer to their questions. And the more immediate value that you provide to them, the more they trust and appreciate you and stick by you as they continue their journey. As we know, developers are always going to trust their peers more than brands. So often the call to adventure actually happens on your behalf by someone else who's close to the developer and recommends you to them. So this means you will want to invest time in building really authentic presences across platforms and channels to form an organic community. And this could also entail organizing events like webinars, live demos, and hackathons, and these are going to allow the developers to engage with not only your product or content or what you have on offer, but also with you and your team to establish that real human connection. You'll want to place yourself where developers are already paying attention. This is going to be things like tech-focused newsletters or podcasts, being present and helpful in different forums, Discords and whatnot, and of course, attending conferences like this one. But regardless of how they receive your call to adventure, the goal here is really to resonate deeply with their current struggles and clearly present a path forward worth exploring. In other words, you want to get them off the couch and into your world. Now, upon that call to adventure, there's often that moment of hesitation that I alluded to earlier. So you essentially want to treat your developers like Dorothy and pave that yellow brick road to your Emerald City. And developers may hesitate for a number of reasons. One might be an unclear website with an unclear why behind your product. The most common product I see is that the messaging isn't super clear and maybe things are explained in a way that is overly technical using kind of in-the-know jargon. But just like Harry Potter doesn't know the Latin to the spells he's about to learn how to cast, your developers might not know the nuance behind why your solution is beneficial, so you might want to clarify the language on that. I think of it as like a top level where you're inviting someone to experience the outcomes, and then further down you can explain kind of how you get to that outcome, but starting at the high level to show them why you're worth their time. Now, effective CTAs, these are crucial for paving that yellow brick road because they represent literal calls to adventure in this metaphor. So you'll want to get really intentional and map out the next steps that you want to have your developers take so that they understand how to pursue the journey with you. Make it easy on them and really hold their hand through that process. To overcome some barriers to entry, you can conduct user testing, and this is going to help you understand maybe what is causing friction or confusion or having people lose the train of progress on your site. You could use things like Hotjar, Full Story, or sponsor of this conference, Sentry, to debug some user issues to make sure that the path is as smooth and friction-free as possible. Now, if your documentation is hard to follow, developers are going to abandon their journey before they even start. So this requires really well thought out docs, as well as if there's an absence of video content on your site, this can really alienate users who prefer and have the learning style of learning visually. And that brings us to the topic of the mentor. On every hero's journey, the mentor, like I said, he or she appears to guide and prepare the hero for the trials ahead. And Simba had Rafiki, Luke Skywalker had Obi-Wan, and your educational content is that Sage guide. It's going to provide your hero with the support, the resources, and the world-shifting perspective they need to fuel their transformation. And it's key to point out here that content is not just a supplemental accessory to your product. I believe the content is an inextricable element of your product because it really is going to help facilitate the conversion of the curious to the convinced and from the dabbler to the doer. And it's also important to recognize that the website that you're presenting to people, that is content itself. And done right, it can function as a way to guide and mentor that developer down that path. So an explainer video, it can quickly communicate how your product can make a difference in developers' lives. In our experience, working with different open source documentation, whether that is the Vue docs, we worked with Bulma as well before, we found that with these kind of explainer videos, developers are going to be spending more time on the page. They'll have longer average session durations and view more pages per session. So in other words, effective informational content right up front in video format, we found is going to engage people more and make them a little more likely to pursue the path towards adoption. And how we think about documentation is it's really a structured path to competency, and they really should be easy to navigate with a clear structure, and you want to think about them as really your hero's map, the survival guide. If you're packing something to help someone survive a long journey, what are you going to put into that? That's your documentation to have them full of the resources they need at every step of the journey. This often includes a getting started tutorial. We found that's one of the best ways to make the learning journey more accessible and also to accelerate that adoption because they get learning the essentials very quickly and are not having to piece everything together themselves. You laid that out for them. And I know that probably for a number of people who are newer to content creation, it might be a little tempting just to do a text-based tutorial. But it is true that the majority of developers actually rely on video to learn new things, and that is more true for the younger the developer. So it's just going to be more and more common that that's the default, pretty much already is, but will more and more become the default way that developers are learning new technology. But like I said, I get it, creating high quality video content, it's intimidating if you don't have much experience. So let's look at what actually makes technical content good and what are some best practices to get the most out of it. So we start and recommend starting with really clean code repo. This is going to have the technical details nailed down. It's going to have a well-scoped, relatable example, not so many dependencies, like I said, scoped to the learning outcomes that you're hoping for at the end of this. And that essentially is described and translated into your written tutorial. And this should really be walking the user step by step, again, guiding them, taking them along that learning journey from the beginning to the end, being clear about what steps they need to be taking. Some missteps I see when people are creating written tutorials is there is often an assumption of knowledge on the learner. Often we can be very close as developers to what we're teaching, and we kind of forget what it was like to learn that ourselves. And so your goal is to make as few assumptions as possible and try to place yourself in the position of that developer who doesn't have all the experience and knowledge that you have. Another pitfall I see is people explaining the how, but not the why. I call this like the repeat after me content. It says, you know, if you want to do this, you do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then voila, it's done. But if you just show the how and you don't focus also on why are we doing what we're doing and what is the theory that underpins this, you're not truly empowering your learner. You're just enabling your learner to repeat after you, but they can't necessarily map that learning outcome over to their own use case. And then you take that written tutorial, and that becomes the video script. So with the script being essentially, you've gotten your article, which becomes the script, but also it comes with the added benefit that you can publish both. You publish the article as well as the video. The article is going to be supplemental for people who like to read or read after they watch the video for later reference. It's also going to give you the SEO benefits if you build that into the article. But like I said, you've got all those benefits that are written, but then that maps over into the script for the video itself. And when it comes to video content, it should really go without saying that audio, good quality audio, is crucial. I'm sure everyone in here has started a video and the audio is just like uncomfortable to listen to, and people drop off in those situations. Even more than poor video quality, poor audio is going to drop people off the fastest. But you also want high definition video, and it's especially important that your code is big enough to be legible, not just on a large monitor, but some people are going to be watching your content on a phone. So that's why you'll see in our content, everything's kind of blown up. You want to kind of forget what your preferences are when you're just personally at your computer, at your text editor. You want to keep the accessibility of your content in mind for the outcome of where it's going to actually be displayed. Now, when it comes to demonstrating code in video, this entails creating really well-structured screencasts that are concise, clean, and really cut the fluff. So you'll want to clean up your recordings so there's no distractions, anything that could lose the developer's focus. You want to be cutting out, avoid repeating yourself, and my biggest pet peeve, and I'm sure many of you can empathize with this, when you're watching a tutorial and someone's guiding you through something and they make a typo or are missing something in the code, and then you are struggling to figure out what's happening, and then at the very end of the video they say, oh, actually, I meant to do this. So those kinds of things, definitely never publish a tutorial like that. Just, bite the bullet, start over from scratch, and really create a clean, polished recording that is going to respect the developer's time. And this is going to involve, again, cutting out pauses, cutting out mistakes, repeats, cleaning that up so that you really get to the cleanest possible outcome for your viewer. Essentially, how I see it is, I don't take for granted the attention that my learner is giving to me, and I feel a responsibility and an opportunity to really handle that with care and to guide their focus and bring them to that outcome that they're hoping for, which is newfound knowledge and newfound skills. So in terms of the editing process, there are tools that can help you out with this. There's some AI tools that Capwing and Jump Cutter both have free tiers that kind of, they might be listening for the essentially blanks and silences in the video, and kind of scanning and helping you do a first round of this that's really going to save you some time in this process. And when we're talking about video content and having quality audio that goes along with it, it's really vital that those two are in sync. So what do I mean by that? Essentially, there might be a situation where your audio is taking longer than the amount of video that you recorded, so you would just want to add frames and extend that video section out so it keeps the audio in sync, so that, again, you have that that viewer's focus. You want to be very careful with it and not distract them by like showing them something differently than you're talking about, being really mindful of syncing everything all the way through. Now with video content, we have the unique opportunity to really direct attention. And what I mean by that is we can use things like outlines that show like, hey, I want you to look here. You don't need to look everywhere else. I'm bringing your attention here. Or even better, with some tools, we can narrow focus where you really make it super clear what they are supposed to be looking at. You can even zoom in and out on important things. Again, really bringing things into focus. They've given you their attention, now handle it with care, guide it in a way that really respects that attention to achieve the outcomes that they're hoping for. Screen Studio is a neat tool that I have my eye on that helps with these kinds of things to an extent with screencasting. If you don't have a lot of experience with it, it's going to essentially follow your cursor and whatnot and kind of do some intuitive editing on your behalf. In my case, we use ScreenFlow, and we're doing this manually, but just a suggestion to check out that if you're just getting started. You can also add layers to it to help illustrate what you're communicating. So I love to make connections between things, say like this is connected to this, add an animation and an annotation over it to really clarify what it is that I'm trying to communicate. And these kinds of things really involve animation. And it's really helpful when you're able to bring concepts to life and you're able to make something that's really abstract into something that's concrete that people can just better understand, better memorize because they have a visual association with it. And we use at ViewMastery Keynote, but the animation essentials are pretty standard across the board. Even if you do web animations, you essentially have a timeline, and you, in the context of developer education, would be wanting to pick out some icons that represent the concepts that you're illustrating, and then there's 3 stages to any animation. There's the build-in, where you bring the object onto the screen. Then there's the action. This is what action, if any, or actions, plural, if you wanted to combine things and stack them. What action are they doing when they're on the screen? And then the third one is build out. How do they leave the view? And just with those 3 different states, if you're using multiple objects, you're combining them, maybe adding delays between them, you can get pretty complex outcomes if you just get creative and think about how you see things in your head and how to map them out into visuals. If maybe that's not something that comes naturally to you, I would recommend having a chat with maybe ChatGPT and say, hey, there's this concept that I want to teach. How could I use a visual metaphor for this? And then you've got some ideas to pull from that you animate yourself. Speaking of AI, for the first time ever, we have the ability to provide really custom, personalized support with custom chatbots that can be trained on your product and its docs and really be that digital mentor when maybe your live customer support is not available. It's a really interesting approach that we, for the first time ever, have the option to pursue. In terms of implementing this, there are some kind of pre-baked solutions. There's Fin with Intercom, there's Zendesk, there's Ada, or you can create your own custom GPT with OpenAI to function in this way. Now, an effective mentor, this is going to be the best way to get your hero to cross the threshold into that new world with confidence. And practically, what this means is something like getting started with a getting started tutorial, building a demo app, experimenting in a code playground, really crossing the threshold of investigation and exploration into understanding and adopting. Once they cross the threshold, as I alluded to earlier, they go into the phase of approaching the inmost cave. This means that they're studying, pushing their boundaries, they're preparing for battle in terms of the bigger, more complicated use cases. And at this step, it's vital for you to be supplying them with things that will help in this effort, such as troubleshooting guides, integration guides, more advanced tutorials, practical cookbooks, recipes for how to achieve different things, and having a community of support, whether that's internally in DevRel or customer support, or creating a natural community on platforms like Discord. And this all culminates in the explorer finally becoming the hero of this story and reaching mastery and able to have the competency to realize their potential and solve their challenges. And with this, they've essentially come full circle, and who was the hero now becomes the mentor and the advocate, able to essentially bring back the Holy Grail, the Master Sword, the elixir that they've attained, and bring it back into their ordinary world, being able to share what they've learned, help others, and again, advocate on your behalf, creating that full circle of education and mastery. Now, in my experience working with VueMastery, training new instructors, it takes quite a bit of time to master these things. Obviously, I couldn't go into super great detail with just 30 minutes, but these are really the things to keep in mind, a nice mental model to have as you're producing content. But if you want any help out with this, I do want to let you know that I am offering developer education on demand. So if you need help with your documentation, with getting started, or explainer video, that's all something that me and my team are now offering as a consultancy. So feel free to reach out if you need any help with that. If you need help leveling up your DevRel team to be better content developers, then that is something I would be happy to help out with. I also want to let you know that on VueMastery, right now we're in Black Friday. That means we have a 60% off discount. So you can gain access to all of our courses for a year at 60%. This is the biggest discount of the year, so definitely take advantage of that if learning with us is something that you have in mind. If you haven't yet seen me at the booth, I have cheat sheets for VueRouter, Pinia, and Nuxt, so you can have kind of all this essential syntax at your fingertips, just on your desk. And that brings me to the final section here. Oops. I'm missing the slide, but it's the trivia. So the question is, in order to win the sweatshirt, can anyone name 5 of the 8 stages of the hero's journey that I laid out? Yes. Perfect. All right, you get the sweatshirt. All right. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Adam. That was amazing. So many points you made really resonated with me and the developer education team at Netlify and all the things we're working on. I will say what I took away most from this presentation was that beginner Vue developers are on their way to becoming Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, Frodo Baggins, Neo, or Simba, or maybe all of them. Maybe all of them.
Above,
I don't know. Yeah, Vue developers. Amazing, amazing. We've got a couple minutes for a couple questions if anybody wants to ask Adam anything.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on documentation. So we've had success with documentation being part of the repo. And we've actually been using Docus, which I think is now deprecated, so I don't know if there's any update on that. But what would you recommend as far as like tools for documentation for a specific project?
I would probably recommend, Evan created, it's VuePress, right? That's the name of it? For documentation, I'd recommend that. That's what, Eduardo, that's what you're using for your doc sites? Yeah. It's a nice kind of prepackaged structure that has best practices built in and performance built in. So VuePress is something that I would recommend in that case in terms of platforms.
All right, got time for one more? Anybody else? No? All right, everyone give it up for Adam.
All right. Thank you, everyone.